Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is March 21st, and we are in a period of high rates right now on crypto. People are paying 20, 30, 50, 100% APRs to get long, but that's not the only people paying high interest rates. Out in the real world, in real life, when you actually walk outside, there's a lot of people who are actually paying quite a lot, 20, 30% for consumer lending, might even be higher than that. And it can be predatory at times. And it's been a topic of conversation widely around because a lot of people have been impacted by this. And so today we have on Thor Abbasi, who is the founder of Zivoe, to come and help us explain how crypto can make a dent and dismantle the predatory operations of some of these high interest consumer lending businesses. So welcome, Thor.
Yeah. Hey, Sam. Thank you so much for having me on. Just one thing. It's Zivoe.
Zivoe.
Zivoe. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe there's a lot of uh, there's a lot of like what is it? It's not consonants. It's anyways. Yeah. So great to have you here, and we are going to talk about consumer lending today. So, like, what is the issue with consumer lending that you guys are approaching and trying to provide a solution for?
Yeah, for sure. So, you mentioned right now, like in crypto, people are paying really high funding rates, for instance. And, we're used to that in crypto because we all would probably consider ourselves to be a little bit degen. And so, we may not think twice when we see, an APR that has triple digits. But what a lot of people don't know is that in traditional finance, there is a huge part of the unsecured consumer lending market where people are receiving loans with triple digit APRs. And so, a really common scenario, unfortunately, in this market is someone may borrow, let's say, $2,500 at a 300% APR. And if that person's not making any principal payments in the first year loan, they could pay $7,500 in interest.
Wow.
And I think the thing is, people don't realize that it's as big of a problem as it is because as many people that live in New York City will take out one of these loans every year. So you're looking at something, in the realm of like 10 million Americans are taking out a loan every year that's either a payday loan or a high interest installment loan that has one of these really crazy APRs. And so our team has an interesting mix. We have an interesting mix of people that have spent time in TradFi and have actually worked in this particular market. And then also some of our kind of more DeFi native team has built, some of other credit protocols in the past, such as Maple Finance, actually. And so we feel like we have the, right set of skills between both sides to come together and hopefully use crypto as a solution to beginning to solve this problem because it's an issue that impacts millions of people worldwide and really negatively impacts their financial situation.
I think this is probably the reason why, like, usury is looked down upon in parts of the world, especially in the Muslim world. Uh, Usury is a pretty negative impact on people, especially those who need to take debt. And when you don't have caps on what interest rates can be, it can, like you said, I mean, you take out a $2,500 loan and you're paying $7,500 just in the first year because of the compounding interest. I think that's a pretty broad social topic that has been brought up. I mean, inside the United States, there's no caps on interest. And I know that those triple digit loans can go even higher for like payday loans or for other things. You could look into like the thousands of percents where you borrow $50 and you're having to pay $30 back in a month later. So it's definitely a major issue that needs to be tackled. And why do these high funding rates exist? Like, why are people paying such high interest or I guess accepting these high interest rates?
Yeah, happy to kind of jump into, why, this market exists in the first place or why someone would actually take a loan with a triple digit APR. Because I think we all are probably, people for listeners are probably thinking, why would someone actually agree to take one of these loans in the first place at such a high APR? And I think one of the things, a lot of people don't necessarily account for or think about is in the US, half the country can't afford $1,000 emergency. And so, for a large portion of these people, if they don't have access to, let's say, standard rate credit, like let's say a credit card that they could charge something to, or friends or family that would loan them money, if they find themselves in a financial emergency where, let's say their car breaks down and they need it to go to work, they have to get capital somewhere to, repair their car, for instance, and they might need to do it, within a couple of days, or else they can't get to work and they lose their job. And so, I think this is something, when we think about it, is people find themselves in positions sometimes where something like this is their only option. And then, they'll take one of these loans thinking, hey, I will pay it off, next paycheck cycle, for instance. And it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you get people like, for instance, Kimberly Richardson, who actually Bloomberg wrote a feature about her. I think the article is titled like lending at 589% during the pandemic. But she borrowed something like $2,500 at like a 280% APR and paid back over $10,000 in interest and fees over 3 years.
Oh, wow. That that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I've been in a couple of situations where I've had high credit card balances, and even at 25%, the way that it just creeps like month to month is very like soul draining. Like you're just looking at, like I have $20,000 of credit card debt, and I'm getting charged $500-$700 every month and that's only at 25%. And I really felt like I had to work as fast as possible to get out of that. But with a triple digit APR, I don't even want to really put myself in that position. That would be just crushing. And there's not really an easy way to exit out of it either as well too.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of reasons why loans at this kind of APR even exist in the first place. And I won't try to go too technical, so I'll try to speed through it. And so some of the concepts are essentially adverse selection, moral hazard, and information asymmetry. And so essentially moral hazard and adverse selection basically mean that when someone is lending or a lender's lending at a high interest rate, is that the likelihood that a borrower is going to use those funds as intended, for instance, fixing their car versus, going and taking that money and doing whatever, buying a new computer, increases. Or the odds that someone just takes this money and doesn't pay you back increases when the APR is higher. And then a lot of times people will receive a higher APRs because of essentially a concept called information asymmetry, which is there's not enough information out there for just traditional or standard credit models to underwrite them effectively and understand what the risk associated with someone is.
Mhm.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask then, like, how do you attack those two issues then?
So attacking those issues, part of what we are looking to do as Zivoe, and maybe this is kind of a good segue if it works for you, into talking a little bit more about the protocol and how it actually is making an impact in these markets. But what we are doing at Zivoe initially is we are taking what we've termed as a B2B2C model. So we are providing capital to regulated consumer lenders who then take that capital off chain and actually use it to originate more affordable consumer loans. Now, initially, we're working with a company called Zenclusive, and what they're looking to do is actually for individuals like Kimberly who have shown that they are repaying their loan and have made a number of payments to actually refinance them into a lower interest rate loan.
Yeah, that's the best thing to be able to do, is to just get people out of the grind, right? Out of the compounding interest and into something which is a bit lower and something that they can actually pay off at the end of the day. Like restructuring that debt is the fastest way to provide a solution for somebody who's in one of these kind of, it's almost like a Sisyphus, wait, it's not Sisyphus, but the guy who pushes the boulder up the hill constantly, right? Yeah.
Good analogy.
Yeah. Keep pushing the boulder up the hill. It keeps going higher and higher, but eventually, like the debt just catches up, and you're not able to pay it off anymore, and it rolls down, and all of a sudden the amount that you get behind on payments, and then the amount that you owe just explodes even further. We've seen some of these models not specifically this model, but the consumer like or institutional credit lending, where people in crypto have been able to provide their stable coins to different providers. You mentioned Maple before. Maple Finance essentially took stable coins and other assets from people and then lent it out to institutional market makers, other funds, so that they could go out and trade with it. There was a couple of defaults, obviously, because I mean it's bound to happen in this system around FTX. But how do you manage the risk and lending side when it comes to this B2B2C model?
Yeah, for sure. So the risk is something we take very seriously. And I think that's one area where kind of having some people who have spent, decades in TradFi doing underwriting, not only for consumers, but for businesses, is a really, good kind of thing to have as institutional knowledge. Because, like you mentioned with Maple, for instance, defaults in a way, occur. That's the nature of lending money. You're never always going to necessarily get 100% of your money back, but your job as a risk manager is to make sure that you get enough of it back that you are profitable overall. And so that is kind of the way we look at it holistically in terms of what we're actually doing from a risk perspective. So we're going to be working with the lenders that we're providing capital to make sure we fully understand how they're doing their underwriting at the consumer level to ensure we are comfortable with it as a team. And so our team has, kind of like I mentioned, decades of experience in lending. So one of my other co-founders actually ran one of the largest consumer lenders of its kind in the US. And our risk advisor is a guy named Walt Ramsey, who actually worked at JP Morgan Chase and ran risk for their consumer credit division, took a consumer lender public, and has, ran risk for Lloyd's Bank in Europe, and just basically ran risk about anywhere he can. So that is just really good knowledge for us to have to make sure that when we're working with these lenders, that they are, taking the correct steps to make sure they're managing risk and they're originating loans to consumers who have a high likelihood of repaying. And
Yeah,
the other step we are taking to secure the protocol is, as these lenders are originating consumer credit products, is they're actually going to be placed into an SPV or a special purpose vehicle that the protocol has rights to in the event that the lender were to stop repaying the protocol, for instance.
yeah. So how big is this market?
So it's hard to put an exact figure on this particular market, but we can kind of get a rough estimate. So in the US, what we do know is there's a little under $250 billion in unsecured consumer loans. And within that, about $90 billion is considered non-prime consumer loans. And then about a third of that, give or take, are loans that would have these triple digit APRs. So in the US alone, it's quite literally, somewhere between, let's say, 20 and $30 billion. And that's in the US alone. And this is a global issue. So this isn't something that's limited to the US. This market exists in the UK, for example, and of all places and elsewhere.
It's pretty incredible. That's a heck of a lot of money in these kind of unsecured consumer loans that people might be facing those high yields with. These companies that you're talking about, like, I mean, I know you mentioned it's inclusive. Like, where were they accessing capital before, and how would that shift by using is it Zivoe?
Zivoe.
Zivoe, yeah, by using Zivoe.
Yeah, for sure. So, in a traditional model, what would happen is a lot of these consumer lenders would go out to Wall Street and essentially go to a credit hedge fund and get a line of credit from one of these hedge funds, and then essentially use that to fund loans that they are originating. And then we are providing essentially another avenue for these companies, especially that are looking to offer more affordable credit solutions, to access capital at what we feel are going to be, lower potentially than what, they could get traditionally on Wall Street, or just as competitive. And on the liquidity provider side, for people who are in crypto and are looking to, earn yield on their stable coins, this is an asset class that is, one, uncorrelated with crypto markets, 2 is actually uncorrelated with traditional equities. And 3, there's actually data showing that it's counter-cyclical in a way. So loss rates in this particular sector of credit actually remained constant, for instance, through the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah. I mean, I was just looking up some statistics, like the amount of total loans that have been taken out for personal has just skyrocketed in the past 10 years. Might be because of the increase in companies that are providing these loans, additionally the yields that they can access and provide to their investors. But you can see here that the total personal loan balances has shot up from $48 billion to $254 billion, like you said. And good portion of that is in those high interest rate loans. So the market is definitely there. I mean, it's a pretty sizable market that you're talking about, and being able to like get out and work with people to rein in their debt, I think is a pretty noble operation that you guys have set up.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that. So these companies, right? So normally they would go out and access these credit funds. Like, how different will the lending terms, like how does the cost of capital come down by using Zivoe?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the thing with using Zivoe that we feel is beneficial to lenders in a way is because we are aggregating all this different capital on chain, is we feel that we are going to be able to offer a lower cost of funds to some of these different lenders, partly because of how we're structuring our terms with them, which I won't go too much into right now. But I think that's something that really sets us apart from some of these more traditional kind of funding avenues in terms of, let's say, certain requirements or how some of these are structured. And so we feel like we're going to be able to be, really competitive with some of these traditional funding sources and provide companies another avenue to secure funding through DeFi.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the type of market that could scale to the billions as well, too, through crypto funded consumer loans.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you saw the kind of total size of the market for unsecured consumer loans, and while we're not addressing the entirety of that market, I think I'm trying to think of where we're at as DeFi market cap right now, but the size of this market is like 2.5 times the size of the DeFi market alone right now. So it's absolutely massive, and I think that's one of the things to me that makes it an interesting kind of asset to bring on-chain exposure to, because it is so scalable, right? This isn't something where if you put so much money into it, you're going to see like yield compression, right? This is fairly, scalable in the long run.
So for the people that are bringing their, I guess it would be stable coins to Zivoe, like what would they expect from the lending process? Will there be, with Maple, there was multiple pools that you could go into. You essentially would choose the different companies that you would lend to and the terms and the length and everything. Is that structure going to be with you guys, or are you looking for just like a generalizable pool that kind of aggregates all the yields together and provides one rate?
So we're more of generalized pools. So like you mentioned Maple, you could go into like a pool, like a specific pool for a company, right? And a lot of other credit protocols out there, for instance, like Goldfinch or Credix, have a similar kind of model. Now, Goldfinch, for instance, had like one senior pool and then a bunch of different junior pools for different deals. We just have essentially two tranches. We have a senior tranche and we have a junior tranche, and both provide you aggregated exposure to all the loans the protocol has made. But the junior tranche acts as first loss capital if defaults were to exceed the amount of off-chain collateral that's in the off-chain SPV. In terms of like experience for a liquidity provider, what actually happens is you would come to our site, you would deposit stablecoins into either the senior tranche, the junior tranche, or both. And for every stablecoin you deposit, you receive a tranche token. And this is a receipt token that can then be staked to actually claim yield.
And is it like fixed term? Like when you come and deposit into the senior tranche or junior tranche, are there lockups, say for, I don't know, 6 months, a year, 2 years, in how long the funds would be used for?
Yeah, so we're going to have, when we launch, an initial lockup period, after which we will allow people to do redemptions as on an available basis. And then also, these tranche tokens are ERC20 tokens as well. So there's some flexibility there. So there will be a bit of a lock, but you will be able to redeem your capital on the long run. And we'll, before we go live, we'll be putting out those terms very transparently, so everyone has an understanding of hey, this will be the minimum lock period and kind of how long you'll be in for.
Yeah. It was interesting at ETH Denver to hear kind of the sentiment around stablecoins and where we are, that the infrastructure pretty much has been built at this point to be able to grow, like issue stablecoins, have them be transferred on L2s or Solana or anywhere else at relatively good fees, and also to be able to handle the on and off ramps to move those funds on chain, off chain. And so now, looking into the future, the next 5 years really of crypto, when we're talking about stablecoins, is going to be the growth of these middleware solutions like you guys, who are out there and working to essentially connect everything that's happening on chain and provide actual consumer services and institutional services that are happening off chain, and work with the credit markets that we built, the money markets, the liquidity that's on chain, to then provide access to that for people who might need it in the real world.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I think is one of the things that really excites me just about the timing of, when we're getting ready to launch, because like you mentioned, the infrastructure is there for stable coins. And then, you've had, some of these different kind of credit protocols that have kind of pioneered a path a little bit in terms of, how you go about doing some of the stuff, especially in the tokenized treasury space, because that's now been around for a little bit. There's a path, I think, for protocols such as ours now to come to market in a way that you couldn't have even a couple years ago.
Yeah, because it's not enough just to build an infinite amount of dexes and money markets. There has to be demand for what's actually being sourced there and supplied there outside of just traditional crypto leverage. I know that the leverage in crypto is pretty cyclical. Like on the run up that we're having right now, there's high demand costs, high borrowing costs, but on the way down, all that pretty much evaporates. And like for all of 2022 and most of 2023, the borrowing rates for stables was pretty much zero. That's why we had the whole narrative around treasuries coming on chain, because what you could get at Aave for depositing stables into was pretty low. I mean, it was like 2 to 3%, maybe even like 1 at times. And there was a shift into treasuries because that was offering 5% at the time, which seemed like a huge amount, like a massive increase from what we were offered and provided at the time. Now it kind of seems pretty small in comparison for how the markets are moving. But I think for like crypto and DeFi to really mature, there has to be a more stabilization across the credit landscape to provide different yields, different fixed terms, and different risks, so that people can use their funds to either invest or lend or engage in a variety of activities that are outside the scope and sphere and influence of the daily machinations of the crypto market.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things too, you kind of mentioned like the cyclical nature, for instance, of like funding rates in crypto. And right now it's fantastic and treasury yields aren't too bad. But eventually that's going to change, right? You'll probably see, funding rates and cost in crypto kind of plateau or kind of come down a little bit. And then, more than likely we'll see the federal funds rate fall eventually, and you're going to see treasury yields come down. And so I think there's definitely going to be a place for protocols that, like you mentioned, to come in across the credit spectrum with a number of different offerings that I think will kind of help make up for the fact that over time you will see those rates fall.
Yeah. So what would you guys primarily be dealing with as stablecoins? Is it Tether and USDC, or will there be just USDC, or what kind of options will there be?
Yeah, so we anyone can deposit USDC, DAI, or USDT.
Okay, that's cool. And is this on mainnet, or will you be on L2s as well?
So we're going to be launching on mainnet to begin with, and then eventually we would be looking at either migrating completely to an L2 or kind of having part of our protocol in an L2.
Yeah, because I mean, it's really just the same functionality of providing the deposit pools, and mainnet has good access to capital. But at the end of the day, when again, it's cyclical in fees as well too. I don't think anybody wants to pay $500 to enter into a lending pool with $5,000, right? To be able to access smaller amounts where people are not depositing like $1 million at a time, it's important to have that kind of cross chain expansion.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is. And then also for us in the long run, because right now we are doing kind of this B2B2C model. So the transactions we're making on chain are going to be of a larger kind of notional value. But one of the things we will really, envision doing in the future with these stablecoin kind of on-off ramp rails being built out in the manner they are, and then certain features with account abstraction kind of getting battle tested a little bit more, is actually looking at how in jurisdictions where we can do so, we could potentially get direct consumer exposure.
That's interesting. So you guys would just lend yourself at some
But
point?
potentially, yeah.
That would be good, because then you could essentially structure the whole thing yourself and not have to use these other third parties. That's a much different operation, though.
Correct.
A business line, yeah.
Correct. It's a little bit different of an operation, but it's one with kind of our backgrounds that we're familiar with, and we feel is a model we want to move to in the long run.
Hmm. So how do you actually grow this thing to $1 billion? Like, what's the route to uh, making this a household name for people who are looking for reasonable rates for personal unsecured credit lines?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the first thing is, clearly just proving out the model and that we are able to manage risk effectively. And so I think that is the first thing, and that is, what we're really looking to do in the first couple months after launching is, show that we can, provide this capital to lenders, have them take it off chain, have them originate these loans, and have them bring it on chain. And then I think, once we've proven out that model, I think, the road to getting to, something like $1 billion could happen pretty quickly. Because one of the things that if you go look at some of these publicly traded companies, they will originate literally 200 to 300 billion dollars, or sorry, 200 to 300 million dollars in loans every year. And so the path to getting there is fairly, I don't want to say straightforward, but it's not, something that is crazy to think about. I think the thing is, can we continue to execute on the model? And then I think if we can do that, what is really interesting is I think this is a way to actually help DeFi as a whole grow, because this is the type of product we envision that, for instance, institutions could look at and go, okay, this is a fairly traditional business, model in a way with what they're doing in terms of lending to consumers, but would provide us with exposure to actually crypto markets as well, and give us a way to kind of dip our toes in this in a manner that is a little bit more familiar to us. And so I think that is, where we really kind of see ourselves going.
Yeah, the thing about stablecoins is that it's not so much about the speed or access, or sorry, not about the speed, but it's more about the ability to move funds in larger sizes with this instant settlement. Like, you deposit into the contract, and then those funds are immediately available. There's a lot of legacy debt, like technological debt, in a lot of these traditional lenders. And I was talking with a Colombian stablecoin provider, Santiago, the other day, And it's really about building an open rail, like an open source rail for people to use and then kind of build in on top of or connect into, that they can build their own apps or get access to these types of credit or money at a lower cost of capital, which is really important at the end of the day. I think that the open source like technology that is being built really kind of opens up new avenues for people to focus on the businesses rather than just legacy technology debt of how do we connect with banks, how do we connect with these other brokerages or different credit providers that normally we would need uh, like months to build out, and we're trying to string together all this spaghetti into one thing versus having a clean on-chain solution where all the function calls are known and easy to use, and it really abstracts away a lot of the complexities to make the money handling process quite easy.
Yeah, I mean, going back to kind of how you're asking how we're going to be competitive with let's traditional funding sources is that's a big part of where we feel in the long run we're going to have a competitive advantage in a way is because by doing this in an on-chain manner, as some of these open source rails get better and get lower cost, because some of them are still a little bit more on the pricey side for a transaction, but in a typical lender, right, you have a whole bunch of from a tech perspective, you could call it in a sense like middleware, right? You have people like payment providers or, loan servicers or all these different kind of people who are taking a piece of the pie, so to speak, that if you can do most of this on chain, they're no longer in the picture. And so that is, capital that can one be passed on to liquidity providers and the two also passed on to borrowers to give them an additional cost savings.
Well, very cool. I'm excited to see how this goes. And when are you guys launching?
Yeah, for sure. So we are going to be holding our ITO, which is what we're terming our initial tranche offering, in June. So right now, our tentative launch date is actually June 13th. So we will be kind of launching our ITO then, and this is the first opportunity for liquidity providers to come deposit stablecoins into the protocol. And then we'll actually be airdropping our governance token to people who provide liquidity during this initial ITO period.
Amazing. Well, we'll be looking forward to that, and we will have more information about that on Leviathan News. For the people that are watching at home, we have all the links if you're watching on YouTube, you should be able to see all the links on how to join the Twitter and Telegram. We have a great news feed where we're pushing out crypto news on pretty much like a minute by minute, hour by hour basis, round the clock. We have a big team of people that are working in a decentralized fashion to make that happen. And we would love your support. And so make sure to follow us on Leviathan News on Twitter and also Telegram as well too. And Thor, thank you for coming today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Sam. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. We are going to have our llama party. We have a very special guest lined up. You will find out pretty soon. That will be hosted by Garrett. So we will see you guys tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you again, Sam.